We dealt with mainly the Middle East free zone, 2015, the status of the diplomatic efforts to bring a Middle East free zone soon. We dealt with Iran. We have some international perspective for comparative cases like North Korea, India, and Pakistan. And those who participate, I think, have learned a lot. And I want to thank all the participants that spoke in the very rich panels. I personally have learned a lot, and thank you very much. I do want to concentrate on the main and the most important issue, which is the status of the negotiation, the agreement, the nuclear program of Iran. Professor Evron have said that he supports the agreement, but he haven't gave the arguments. Instead, we got two panelists that were against it. I have to not agree with you. I think the agreement is very, very problematic. Very problematic, and we don't have an agreement yet. We don't have an agreement yet. The final parameters are not clear yet. There are negotiations, as General Amidror outlined so vividly about the bazaar techniques, but this agreement is problematic and is a source of concern. It's a source of concern. The parameters that were published in Lausanne are beyond parameters that I described in the past as reasonable parameters for an agreement with Iran. Because I was not part of the choir that say 0, 0, 0, 0. You remember the Audi option. 0 enrichment, 0 nuclear capabilities, 0 everything. I thought that this is not realistic. And I thought that there are parameters that the international community, the P5+1, Israel can live with. This is far away from the parameters that we are seeing today. And I think that we all understand why these parameters were not met. Because the P5+1 came to the negotiation in a weak position, with no leverages. They took the military option off the table for all practical purpose, even though they pay some lip service to it. And the Iranians understood it very well. And the desire to reach an agreement that will be a successful agreement, a legacy that you can take with you when you leave the White House, was very, very strong. So with a weak position in the negotiations and with the Iranians playing the negotiation tactics much better, we came to this problematic agreement. But we are facing, I think, 3 stages along the timeline. One that should have been a week from now is until we sign the agreement. I tend to agree with Giora that an agreement will not be reached until the end of the month, especially after the Supreme Leader speaking 2 days ago, basically denouncing and refusing even to accept what was agreed with Zarif in Lausanne. And there is also an interesting bipartisan statement that officials from the first administration of Obama, who are retired now, published yesterday in Washington, pointing out at the weaknesses, at the weak point in the agreement. And no surprises there. We wrote about it. We wrote about the need for much stronger inspection everywhere, every time, anytime. We pointed at the issue of R&D. The Iranians are not crawling back with their capabilities and shortening the 1 year rollback. The issue of dismantling the centrifuges and shipping out the enriched uranium, the stockpile that the Iranians have already, and the PMD issue. All these 4 holes in the agreement should be closed, if somebody wants to call it a reasonable agreement. And the reasonable agreement should be compared to the alternative. That's why I always thought that the Audi option is not realistic. The problem is that the Obama administration, using the argument that the alternative to agreement is a war. And this is a very, very unproductive position. Because if you stick to this argument, the Iranians will get everything they want. Because nobody wants war. Nobody wants war. And the main argument that we are doing here, that we are putting forward to our government on one hand and to our American friend on the other hand, that the alternative to agreement is not a war. Yes, we heard that no agreement is better than bad agreement. However, the definition for bad agreement is totally different on the 2 sides of the ocean. And I wish Giora is right, and they are now speaking, because I think the understanding that there was no good discussion, exchange of ideas, a trustworthy assessment of the situation between officials, very senior officials, because of the distrust between the president and the prime minister, was right. And once again, the INSS recommended highly to break this, the disconnection between the 2 administrations. If the government have adopted it, I'm happy. I'm not sure this really happened. But if we reach an agreement, maybe some of the points will be corrected, some of them I guess not. There is another stage, the stage of the 30 or the 60 days that Congress can try to block a bad agreement or an unacceptable agreement. This is, I think, should be left to domestic American issue. And Israel should stay away from this partisan war in Washington. For many, many years, Israel was a bipartisan issue in America and avoided involvement in the American political arena. I think we should go back to this, and if the agreement is bad, I think the chances that Congress will stop it are not low, And then will come, if Congress will not stop the agreement, will come the time of the agreement. As we saw in the very good presentations that Mark showed us, there are 10 to 15 years that the Iranians are rolling back, not to the degree that I thought will be helpful, but in a way, backward, with some significant limitations, and I hope very good inspection, transparency, and verification. Now there is a philosophical issue, whether 10 or 15 years are A long time or a short time? For young people, it's a long time. For gray hair people, it's a short time. And no doubt that 10 or 15 years is a longer period than a military attack can achieve. However, and I'm going back to the issue of what is the alternative war. The alternative is not war. The alternative are more sanctions. The alternative is a surgical military one-night operation that will achieve not 10 years, 3 years. But after 3 years, you can do it again. And maybe the Iranians will change their mind, that they will see that the military option is credible. But in these 10 years, 15 years, there are 3 scenarios that we have to be ready for. We don't know what future scenario will develop. Each one of us has his own assumptions, calculations, predictions, prophets. But we have to be ready for the 3 of them. One scenario is the transformation scenario. The very optimistic assumption that many people in Europe and the US administration has, that Iran will be transformed during the 10-15 years. They will find out that nuclear capabilities are a liability and not an asset. And they will take the money that they will get from lifting the sanction and invest it into the Iranian economy and the Iranian social needs. And at the end of this period, we'll have a different Iran. Iran will be similar to Sweden, to Austria, and we all be happy. I do vote for this scenario in my hopes, but the chances that I give it, as I stand here today, knowing the Iranians very well, 5%. I spoke with David Singer yesterday. Can I quote you? Sure. 0.5%. 0.5%. So there are another 2 scenarios with much higher probability. One, that the Iranians will cheat, as they have done in the past, and a North Korean model. The Clinton administration signed an agreement with North Korea, and a couple of years later, the Koreans left the NPT and went to the bomb. So this is one scenario that we have to be ready for it. The good news, I think, in this scenario, is that Israel will not be alone. The Americans will have to react to such a violation of the agreement. It is not the gradual, on the gray areas that the Iranians are usually doing. It will be a decisive violation. The third scenario is that the Iranians are keeping the article and the letter, every article and every letter of the agreement, according to their interpretation. They are not becoming Swedish, they don't living, they are not abandoning the desire to have a nuclear capability and a nuclear bomb, but they have patience. They have patience, and they will do whatever they can do around the agreement. And this brings us to the very problematic situation that Mark has described in his presentation. I think, and I am calling upon the Israeli government and the American government to prepare their policy and their future actions for the 2 scenarios that I described, not the transformation scenario. The 95% of a real challenging future. And here I hope Giora is right, that the Israelis and the Americans are talking about what will be the policy if they will find a significant violation, and they have to agree what is a significant violation, because we know that when we will find something will go with it to the American intelligence community, and they will have a different idea, and they will want some time to check it and to ask the Brits and the French what they are thinking about. So what is significant violation? What is the mechanism to make it fast enough to reach an agreement, to reach an agreement about policies? What should be done? How the sanctions will be snapped back with all the difficulties that we have heard today? And what will be the strategies to deal with it? Whether sanctions, whether all kind of short of war activities, and people spoke about cyber and covert and clandestine, or the military option. I think this is the most needed and responsible move that the Israeli government should do. Sit with the US administration and agree on how they will react in case that the optimistic transformation scenario is not going to happen. I have my doubt that this is happening. I think maybe somebody decided to wait 18 months and then to come. I have my assessment what is the best way to do it, but I will not share it with you tonight. So once again, thank you very much for everybody. We are on time, on target, and see you next year.